Greetings and welcome to another episode of Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Here we like to expand our conversation to include history in the past, the present, as well as in the making. And we also look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I am your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Please get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. SportsZone Chicago will be found on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is the world's only Black-owned sports talk app. You can watch it and listen to my show, the flagship show, Sean and Maya in the Morning, and so many others. Please keep up with your breaking sports news, your favorite teams. If you miss something, don't worry about it. Search SportsZone Chicago on YouTube, and please subscribe to the channel. After you do that, I need everyone to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now I'd like to talk to you about this week's episode, Jordan Addison and NIL bidding wars. So this picture right here is our subject of the day. Jordan Addison is a receiver who hails from Maryland. He was formerly at the University of Pittsburgh. HTP held a Pitt. However, after winning the Biletnikoff Award, losing his receiver coach, offensive coordinator, and quarterback, he has entered the transfer portal and is considered the first free agent in college football. So Jordan Addison, Pitt store wide receiver, is officially appeared in the transfer portal at the beginning of this month. He filed his paperwork to Pitt saying that he intended to explore transfer, which did happen before the May 1st deadline, and it resulted in him appearing in the portal just after 3 p.m. on that Tuesday, which was around the deadline. Addison is one of the top returning players in college football, as he earned All-American honors last year, winning the Biletnikoff Award given to the top receiver in college football. Now let's take a quick look at some highlights of Jordan Addison.
And just for all those cats that I was ballin' with, saying rap ain't finna get my ass a scholarship. And how come every teacher's motto is, music ain't gon' do for you what college did for me. That's the problem there, see baby, I ain't you on me. Tonight I'm gonna party with the people that believe.
To the air again for Pickett. This time he throws it to Addison. Nice move, and he stays on his feet. Jordan Addison breaking free, and he will score.
Play action for Pickett. They'll give him a chance to throw it. And coming back to make the catch is Addison, and he's off to the races. Jordan Addison, touchdown Panthers. That may have just run them not only to the house, but all the way to the ACC championship game.
Here's Pickett on a first or second and short situation. Gonna take the launch for Jordan Addison. In stride, touchdown. $53 yards.
Well, the crowd doesn't like it, but here's Pickett now again, throwing to the goal line. And a touchdown for the Panthers. Pickett hits Addison, and they combine for the second time in the game for a touchdown.
Addison on a safety right now.
Design roll to the right. Throwing on the run. Corner of the end zone. Addison beats the safety Turner for the touchdown.
Before the end zone, Pickett will throw. Pass over the middle is caught by Addison. Touchdown, Panthers.
Perfect. That's just 6 yards on that first drive. This is Pickett, wants to throw. This is a deep ball. In stride. It's Addison. Addison to the end zone.
Abanacan to the running back. Jackets show pressure. Pickett, back foot, throw. Touchdown, Addison.
Looking to earn that thrust here. Picked up 10. Addison flushed out of the pocket. Surveying downfield. Fires a strike to Addison. Still on his feet. Got that yak. One guy to beat. All the way down to the 13-yard line.
We see Pickett still going deep.
Deep one. Addison's got it.
So now 2nd down from the 12. Pickett, here's a quick throw. Addison got a nice block, and he'll score.
Pickett to the goal line and in. Touchdown Panthers, Jordan Addison.
Pittsburgh from its 42. Pickett wants to throw, looking deep. Jordan Addison caught it at the 15 and holds all the way through on the completion. Big throw to the Georgia Tech 11 and looped over to the top of Wesley Walker.
Pitt, 3rd and 6. They're coming to get Pickett. He gets rid of it, delivers it right on the money again. Touchdown, Pittsburgh, Jordan Addison.
Pickett airing it out, looking for the end zone. Touchdown, Jordan Addison.
So Hammond, who's got 3 scores on the year, Pickett going to throw on the perimeter. Here's Addison, and he will score easily for the Panthers.
Pickett, deep drop, throws it down the middle. Addison is out there, and he's got the catch inside the 5. Touchdown, Pittsburgh.
Now, right there, you saw highlights that led Jordan Addison to be, again, the first free agent in college football, as well as Kenny Pickett getting drafted by the team right across the hallway, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, off of that video, you can see why this recruiting frenzy is going on for his services, as there are very few established players, and particularly at the wide receiver position this year. As we all know, the spread offense is permeating college football. So with Jordan Addison's skills, catching the ball as well as his yards after the catch, or yak, he's been a top candidate, making him the first free agent in college football. So there's a person close to Addison that reported at the beginning of this month that he was going to run a formal process after his name was in the portal, meaning he would give multiple schools a shot, and that his representative also stated that he was not set on making a destination yet, and he had no timetable on doing that. Now, in the last couple of days, that has proven to be false. The expectation at that time remained that there will not be a name, image, and likeness bidding war, but he would find the best school that suited his skill set in regards to preparing him for the NFL. So when he first put his name in, every school in the country was a suitor. Addison's transfer became a source of contention between the programs at Pitt and USC, and this is through sources of both Coach Narduzzi, the head coach at Pitt, who was listed here, and Lincoln Riley, the former Oklahoma coach, who is now at USC. Coach Narduzzi has made several references and calls to express his displeasure over one of his best players' potential transfers. He's also accused USC of tampering in regards to USC having associates contact Jordan Addison before he was in the transfer portal. Now, the deadline to enter the portal without requiring a waiver to play in 2022 was the first Sunday in May. If you got in the portal after that, you have to require a waiver to play, and that means you have to write a letter and give certain situations as to why you got in the portal so late. Pitt compliance officials had 2 business days to put Addison's name in the portal, with Tuesday the last day could have appeared. Henceforth, they got his name in Tuesday in the afternoon. Now, Addison's potential transfer has emerged as a divisive and important issue looming around college football and the name, image, and likeness deal that has caused so much of a stir in this recent year. In a fascinating scenario of theory, Jordan Addison, again, is one of the most decorated players in the country. He could basically test his value on the open market, per se, with NIL deals, even though they're not considered to be pay for play. They're supposed to be compensation for your name, image, and likeness being used. Now, last year at Pitt, Addison caught 100 passes for 1,593 yards and also had 17 touchdowns. He finished number 5 in the FBS, with 143 targets, and also, again, won the Blitnikoff Award as the best receiver in FBS football. After the season, his wide receiver coach, Brennan Marion, shout out Brennan, Pittsburgh native, left and is now a wide receiver coach at the University of Texas, as well as his offensive coordinator leaving, and Kenny Pickett. So this year, Pitt brought in Tyquan Underwood. He's a New Jersey native, a former Rutgers receiver, and also Frank Signetti Jr. Now, Frank Signetti Jr. has great ties to Western Pennsylvania from his time at IUP and the Signetti's family's involvement with the University of Pittsburgh football program. Again, mentioning all the departures from last year, Kenny Pickett was the number 20 pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the draft. So all these reasons kind of enticed Jordan Addison to get in the portal. As college football cycles through this first full year of the NIL rules, there's a sense that potential transfer of the sport's most established players can cause enough ripples that the powers that be might consider adjustment to these NIL rules that are currently in place. Now, remember, the NIL was supposed to be payment for use of your name, image, and likeness. It's now turned into different people getting trust in corporations, and we'll go over that a little later in the show, to entice players to come to your school for the biggest payout. Now, it's unknown whether there's been any tampering by USC or other schools, but the specter of the whole situation and animosity from Pitt has turned Addison's situation into a national talking point on how the NIL rules can be structured moving forward. Now, Addison did beat the May 1st deadline to enter the portal, so there is no urgency for him to make an immediate decision. However, again, with the bidding wars and the quote-unquote promises that USC has offered, along with the familiarity of Caleb Williams, most people think he'll be headed to USC. The Maryland native, again, talking about Caleb Williams, one reason he's looking at USC is that he already has a relationship with Caleb Williams. Now, Caleb Williams is from D.C. and transferred with Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma to USC. So according to Pittsburgh sports reporter Mike Vukovan, Addison had been offered a deal north of $2 million by USC. And the numbers are not official. They are saying that's the word. Now, reportedly, this deal has went up to around $3 million per se. In addition, he says this is not the first time Addison has been offered money to transfer. The reporter also claimed that the Blitnikoff Award winner was offered $800,000 to play for Kentucky right after the end of the 2021 season, but yet he turned that down, looking for a better opportunity and perceivably more economic security with a greater NIL deal. Now, those numbers might seem outrageous, but it's well within the going rate of NIL deals for top players. There's a 5-star recruit in the class of 2023, and he's already received the NIL deal for $8 million. There's a 4-star receiver and a top 10 defensive lineman, and they both have signed $1 million NIL deals. So now you take a receiver with 2 years of experience. He's the best in college football at his position. He's going to definitely cost more than a player who's yet to reach the collegiate level and is just a 4 or 5-star recruit. Thus, the over $2 million NIL deal is not as eye-popping as many people might seem in regards to acquiring the services of Jordan Addison. Now, let's watch a quick video in regards to that.
I'm going to let you know right now, some of you aren't about to like what I say, but that's okay because you need to hear the truth, and it's going to come from me. The truth hurts. It really does, but sometimes you need to hear it. Lincoln Riley has managed in the past couple of months to go from a guy who was only hated in the state of Oklahoma to now a guy who is hated everywhere outside of California. And guess what? I love it, and I think it's great for college football. Lincoln Riley is now taking this new role of being the villain and the most hated and the evil person of the sport. I can't even remember the last time, and I'm not too sure if there's been another example or case where a coach has been getting this much hate. I want you to understand it's not as simple as they disagree with some things he does here and there. There's people out there who genuinely dislike and strongly hate him. For example, if Kirby Smart at Georgia, he does something that pisses you off, you may not like him for a couple couple of days, but you'll forget about it or get over it in a week or two. Same thing with Dabo Swinney. He says some questionable statements here and there. Sometimes people get upset with him, but genuinely, you don't really hate the dude. You get over it. The main difference with Lincoln Riley is people don't get over the stuff he's done. I think eternally and forever, they're going to dislike him. We got to talk about something though, and that is the situation currently unfolding with the star wide receiver, Jordan Addison. He won the Biletnikoff. He's outstanding. He's going to be a first-round pick, and the tampering or quote-unquote tampering going on with Lincoln Riley. I'm going to let you know right now, some of you aren't about to like what I say, but that's okay because you need to hear the truth, and it's going to come from me. The truth hurts. It really does, but sometimes you need to hear it. College football fans and people in general, they're hypocrites. What has everybody been crying and complaining about the last 5 to 10 years? Number one, these players, they need to be paid for their talents, and I agree with that 100%. And number two, they should be able to transfer and not have to sit out. Well, what do you know? They implement the NIL and transfer portal, and they granted you your wish. The transfer portal and NIL hasn't even been into effect all that long, and now people are complaining about that. It doesn't matter what you do in college football, life, anything, people are always going to complain about something. I guarantee you, if you took NIL out and you took the transfer portal out, they would start complaining again. They would say, oh, well, what happened? We need to pay the players. And literally those same people, you're crying about it right now. That's not really what I'm referring to in the main focus of this video. Here's where I think people need to sit back and shut their mouth. I want you to pay attention and hear me out, because if you don't, you're going to get lost. If you don't know what's going on, long story short, one of the best receivers in the country, he plays for Pittsburgh. They're saying, and the allegations are leaning towards, that Lincoln Riley was tampering and illegally recruited him. In other terms, they're trying to say that he stole them away from Pittsburgh before he entered the transfer portal. The rumor's going on right now, and I believe it. I don't think some of you quite understand the boosters at USC. They're rich. They're stating that USC has guaranteed them $3 million in NIL money and also a house in Southern California. Let me repeat that. $3 million and a house, more than likely a mansion in Southern California. It doesn't get too much better than that. I can't speak for you, but for me, if I was in Pittsburgh and somebody from California offered me a mansion and $3 million, I'm not thinking twice about it. I'm gone. And you also got to take into account, and we'll touch on this later, USC has a great quarterback, and if you're a wide receiver, that matters a ton. Remember, Jordan Addison, he just lost his starting quarterback, Kenny Pickett, and I'm sure that had a lot to go into his decision. Anyways, getting back on topic with the tampering, I want to address it. I'm seeing all over social media and with people talking about it, how apparently tampering's only a problem when it comes to these players. I'm going to offer you this. Every single person watching this video, you do understand and realize you had to tamper to get your current head coach. When Georgia was negotiating contracts with Kirby Smart, he was on Alabama's roster at the time helping Nick Saban. So technically, going by everyone else's standards, that's tampering, because Kirby Smart, he wasn't in the coaching transfer portal before he signed his deal with Georgia. He was negotiating a multi-million-dollar contract with Georgia while he was on staff with Alabama. So technically, going by your guys' rules and your hypocritical thoughts, that's tampering. There's not a single difference in what's happening with Jordan Addison and all these other recruits. What's the difference from him talking to USC while he's at USC and Kirby Smart talking to Georgia when he's at Alabama? Nothing. Actually, there is one difference, and I'll tell you what it is. You don't like it. I'm not a Lincoln Riley fan by any means, but I'm going to take his back on this. He's only getting criticized for all this because he's the poster child now, and everyone just wants to hate on him for no reason sometimes. Let me give you a good example. Alabama's picked up 5 to 6 4- and 5-star recruits in the transfer portal just in the past couple of months. Do you really think all of those guys weren't talking to Alabama before they entered the transfer portal? Come on now. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that 4 out of 5 or 4 out of 6 of the guys that committed and signed with Bama recently, they already talked to him before they left their school. I also want to ask you guys a serious question. Do you really think, come on now, do you really think Lincoln Riley got on the phone with Jordan Addison, the receiver from Pittsburgh, and was recruiting him? He could have, and there's a possibility, but I don't even think he talked to the dude that much. I solely and firmly believe that Jordan Addison, he wanted to go to USC on his own terms, and if anything, him and Caleb Williams, they were talking. I'm not going to say that Addison's not going to help him, because obviously he will, he's a talented player, But that's not Riley's main focus right now. He's trying to rebuild a program that's been terrible. I think getting a wide receiver from Pittsburgh is the last thing on his mind right now. These college football coaches are insanely busy, even in the offseason, whether you think it or not. Like I said, I could be wrong. He could have been calling them every single day of the week. I just don't see that happening. And here's my thing. Even if he was calling them, let's say he called them 30 straight days. So what? I'm going to go back to it. What's the difference from Georgia, Clemson, Alabama when they got all their head coaches? They were already with other teams and they were negotiating deals. There's not a difference. Everyone's upset that these players, they're finally getting the power, and that's how it should be. They bring in the money. Here's another reason why I think people are big hypocrites. I thought we wanted what's best for these players. I thought we wanted them to have full control of their career. I mean, isn't that what college football is about? We want these players to have a great experience. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it starts to become a problem when USC gets a guy from Pittsburgh. Before you get too critical, I would like you to sit back and at least think about it. I'm not agreeing with tampering. I'm not agreeing with USC's head coach, boosters, or assistants calling some kid from Pittsburgh and going, hey man, if you come here, we'll give you $3 million. That's not right. I'm against that just like anybody else should be. That will ruin the game of football. However, here's what I am for. I am for a star wide receiver at the college level getting paid millions of dollars and him getting a great house that maybe his family could move into and it could change their lives. I am for a wide receiver at Pittsburgh who has a terrible offense and a terrible quarterback going to USC and play for an awesome quarterback that could boost his draft stock. I am for a guy from Pittsburgh who might not get a lot of NIL deals because it's Pittsburgh going to California where there's tons of brand deals. I love it. I love it so much. I want to see all these young men get paid. Here's the problem, and I think it's the problem a lot of people have out there. You're jealous and you're envious. That's not you. Let me ask you a question. You don't think Ryan Day at Ohio State, if his boosters came up to him and said, hey, we're going to give this guy from Pittsburgh or we're going to offer him $3 million and we're going to give him a house, Ryan Day would say no to that? Come on now. It only has a bad look because it's Lincoln Riley, and I stand on that. And last but not least, I'm going to leave you with this, and I think this is my best point in this argument. If Jordan Addison was coming to your program on a $3 million deal and he's getting a house, I don't think you'd be too upset and you wouldn't be crying and complaining about it. Everyone's only mad about it and only a hypocrite when it doesn't turn out to go good in your favor. I guarantee you the USC fans, they're smiling and laughing about it. They love this. And rightfully so, you should. But I think everybody, if they was in the shoes that USC was, they'd be happy. You wouldn't be mad about it. You wouldn't say it's tampering. So that's what I'm saying. I think a lot of people are only mad because it's not happening to you. You're not getting the star wide receiver. Ladies and gentlemen, that's when it starts to be hypocritical. I'm very curious. Let me know your thoughts down below.
Now, unpacking that video, you can see that the main subject that was discussed was tampering. However, based on the NIL rules, along with the transfer portal, most coaches are upset because the rich are getting richer. If you take Coach Narduzzi at Pitt, for instance, Pitt will use the transfer portal and NIL rules to get players from, let's say, a lesser school per se, maybe a mid-major school, a MAC school, maybe an FCS school, and it'll benefit them. But then they'll say tampering when they lose a player to a larger BCS school. So, all schools do this now in regards to having somebody affiliated with the program, either loosely or closely affiliated through social media, current players, Twitter. So there's communication going on with these players all the time. It's just that coaches have to understand that this portal gives and takes, similar to what Nick Saban said. So if you're going to call it tampering for one, it should be tampering for all. As the video stated, Alabama signed about 5 or 6 BCS transfers from formidable schools, Georgia Tech, Georgia, and some other high-ranked schools in the Power 5 conferences. So if they can do it and it's not tampering for them, then it should be tampering for Lincoln Riley just because Narduzzi is upset that he's losing his best player that may can affect his financial security and longevity as a coach. So thank you for tuning in. We'll take a short break. And when we come back on this episode of Sports 101, we'll discuss what is an NIL deal and actually how it came to form. So grab a snack and we'll be right back. I'm Jamar Harp. This is Sports 101.
Please stop and listen because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183. Do not delay. Act today, because time is of the essence. That's 773-580-7183. 773-580-7183.
See me. See me.
See me. See my dark skin and my kinky hair.
See me. Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my tan skin and my curly hair.
See me.
Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my face, wet with tears from years of oppression.
See my hands, weathered and worn from decades of pulling myself up through your society.
See my feet split from centuries of walking your delicate line.
See me.
See me.
See me.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
The Chicago way. Welcome back. Again, I'm Jamar Harp, and this is another episode of Sports 101, a show that discusses sport beyond the X and O's. Remember, we talk about the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective through the lens of history in the past, present, as well as in the making. Please make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. You can follow SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, we need everyone to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app you find in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now, before the break, we talked about Jordan Addison, the star wide receiver from Pitt, and his NIL bidding wars. But now we're going to go into what is officially an NIL. Now, collegiate sports largely has been unchanged since its formation more than over a century ago, but recently has experienced unprecedented changes, and particularly in this last year. Many of those changes have been centered around name, image, and likeness, more commonly known as NIL. Now, collegiate sports has always been founded on a tenet of amateurism, which has been a part of the fabric of collegiate sports since the NCAA's earliest conceptions. Basically, to put it in layman's terms, players cannot be paid to play. Student athletes then at first they did, but then they received scholarships to cover the cost of attendance. But in June 2021, the Supreme Court unanimously ruled against the NCAA in the case NCAA versus Alston. Please look that up if you haven't. It's great reading. And that talked about how the NCAA could not limit education-related payments to student athletes. The NCAA then deferred to state laws on name, image, and likeness, and in states that had passed laws, the schools themselves. After these rulings, two things remained constant with the NCAA. No pay for play and no quid pro quo. Now, athletes weren't supposed to receive compensation tied to performance, and recruits weren't supposed to sign deals contingent on going to a certain school. Now, some schools got out in front of this, however, most were caught flat-footed. What followed immediately after this was a slew of endorsement announcements, from NFTs and Nike deals to local restaurants and car dealership partnerships, agent signings, social media, and so many other ways for these student athletes to make money. In early May, however, leaders in college sports met in Phoenix at their annual meeting, and they were shaping their conversation about concerns over a bit of this budding pay-for-play model that the NIL market has turned into through the creation of collectives. Now, what is a collective, you may ask? A collective or companies typically founded by alumni of the school whose sole purpose is to create money for NIL deals to attract the top players. So once the NIL became conceptualized, by the NCAA, what the powers that be did, or the big dogs in NCAA football, most notably the Power Five conferences, they said, we're going to create an NIL deal, and basically you don't have to do anything. We're just going to sign you to come to the school and play. And what they did is they got collectives together so they could pool their resources and provide more money for a larger group of people. The most notable collective is one at Texas A&M, who ponied up millions of dollars for this past signing class, who again is vying for notoriety as they're entering the SEC. University of Texas will soon be in the SEC as well. So again, to get the top recruits in the state of Texas, to keep them in Texas and not go to other SEC or Power Five schools, Texas A&M had a large collective whose sole purpose was to generate millions of dollars to give the student athletes who signed for NIL deals. Now, these financial resources are collected through these companies and then directed, the companies by being collectives, and then directed to the athletes for the rights to use their name, image, and likeness. Now, sometimes this doesn't happen, but sometimes it can be just like it was in the 90s and 80s. You give a player $1,000 and come cut my grass for 10 minutes or something like that. So again, under the NIL rules, these companies can legally sign these players and promote them however they want. So they're basically doing what they used to do under the table, over the table. These collectives operate independently of the university and athletic department, which has led them to be classified as boosters. All these collectives help facilitate NIL deals with the school's current and potential current athletes through the signing date. So basically what's happening now is when you go to different schools, you'll have your presentation, academics, facilities, all the normal stuff. And then usually someone will talk to you about NIL deals saying, well, if you come here, we have this collective and everybody that signs is going to get this amount. You being a 4-star, 5-star, if you come here, you can sign this NIL deal for $1 million. You look at Quinn Ewers 2 years ago. Quinn Ewers was a quarterback in the state of Texas. He reclassified so he can graduate a year early and got a $1 million NIL deal from Ohio State. Didn't really play that year. After that first year, he then used the other new conception of the NCAA, which is the transfer portal, and transferred to the University of Texas back to his home state and signed another NIL deal worth millions. So you had a $1 million freshman transfer to get, millions at a different school through using the NIL and transfer portal. So that's just an example how collectives can sign players, but yet just because you sign them doesn't mean they're going to stay there the whole time. For example, Quinn Ewers is leaving, Jordan Addison. People are leaving for bigger NIL deals now, so which has opened a greater box of issues that must be dealt with. Now, just like I mentioned, recruits of various star rankings are signing big-time contracts or NIL deals for at least millions of dollars. The money is guaranteed regardless of the recruit's long-term presence on the team. So if I sign a $2 million NIL deal with the University of Pittsburgh, I don't have to play. I don't have to do anything. I will get $2 million that year. Now, definitely, it is turned into pay for play. So what the NCAA has done recently is they released new clear guidelines for developing an enforcement arm of the NIL deal to curb boosters' involvement in NIL-related payments. They also consider collectives as boosters. So whether you feel it's just bringing above ground what's already been happening below ground for these new recruiting trends supposedly brought up by the NIL, but this NIL is unnerving a lot of college sports coaches due to the fact that you can lose one of your best players the next year, because you got to remember before there was a transfer portal, there was rules of transferring, you had to sit out. Now that has been loosened, so you got players transferring more often. So these coaches have to handle their players in a more strategic, political way versus in the past where you maybe can berate or do certain things to a player because he couldn't go anywhere. That's not the case anymore. So it's very political, and it's sort of akin to a phrase that the inmates are running the asylum. And I hate to use the phrase inmates because, again, a lot of these players of African-American descent, but just see where I'm coming from, the people that are inside or running it versus the NCAA that had a staunch grip on the rules, not only dating to name, image, and likeness, but GPA, test score, and so many other factors. What we all know is going on is now the NCAA has turned to the wild, wild west. A lot of Power 5 coaches are stating, and it's out of control, and it's getting worse week by week and day by day, it seems. Now, again, these coaches are only saying that because they're losing players that they normally would have paid not to go to other schools to come to them because somebody else is outpaying them. So what's coming forward with these new NIL rules? So there's a new NIL subcommittee that's just been founded, and they spent a few months working on newly released NIL guidelines just to clarify that collectives are considered boosters. So these collectives will be subject to NCAA rules prohibiting booster involvement in recruiting. So basically what the NCAA can do is they can say you can't talk to these collectives until you sign with the school, but there still be recruiters leaking information. If you sign here, this check and show up. All you got to do is sign your name, and you'll be endorsed by such and such LLC. So that's what's going to happen, and the NCAA can't stop that due to the NIL rule. But again, they can't stop the promises before the student athletes are signed. Now, the Division I Board of Directors issued a statement that guidance to Division I on Monday, meaning that the NCAA Enforcement Department will be soon cracking down on collective and other booster offering recruiting inducements. Now, there's some legal experts that came in, and they stated that they believe the NCAA will open itself for further antitrust scrutiny if it attempts to levy sanctions in its place, saying that these lawyers are stating that since name, image, and likeness is not illegal and getting a collective together is not illegal unless you talk to the student athlete before he signs. So what this lawyer is stating is the NCAA can make a bigger problem for itself by going in and trying to enforce these collectives who are paying. Because remember what Nick Saban said, when you do things like this, the rich only get richer. So the NCAA opened this up, so now the rich have the money to pay for the top players. Henceforth, a lot of the transfers are going to the larger schools, and then you see the other subsect that are leaving the Power 5 schools and going to FCS schools, and particularly historically black colleges and universities, and the Southwestern Athletic Conference and the Mideastern Athletic Conference. Now let's look at a timeline on these NIL deals. So the NCAA was first formed on December 28th in 1905, and at its beginning, amateurism was a core tenet that you couldn't pay the players, no matter how much they made for the institution. They only got paid, they only got compensated through cost of attendance because they were amateur. So early in 1987, Southern Methodist University received the NCAA death penalty for multiple repeated violations, including paying players. This was rampant throughout college football in the 1980s. SMU, I believe, was used as a poster child because it wasn't a quote-unquote blue blood Power 5 school, and they wanted to make an example out of someone. Now let's fast forward to September of 2010. Reggie Bush returns his Heisman Trophy after the NCAA investigated and then sanctioned USC based off of provisions that Reggie Bush and his family were given a house when his family moved from San Diego to Los Angeles and money. So the same things that Reggie Bush was scrutinized for, had to give his Heisman Trophy back, now are legal, and schools are doing through collectives and other corporations that want to sponsor NIL deals for top student athletes. Next, in August of 2014, Ed O'Bannon, former UCLA basketball player, had his lawsuit O'Bannon versus NCAA, in which he challenged the NCAA's use of former athletes NIL for commercial purposes, in particular in video games and jersey sales. Mr. O'Bannon played for UCLA and won a national championship, so he would often see his jersey being sold on campus and in basketball arenas and online for over $100, which he received no money for. And then you had the NCAA video game that came out with his likeness that sold millions of dollars, and again, no money was received, which was the basis of the lawsuit O'Bannon versus NCAA. Moving forward in early 2019, you had California Senate Bill 206, which was proposed, and Senate Bill 206 is basically the Fair Pay to Play Act. 2021, we got the NCAA versus Austin and these rulings against for pro and con and against paying student athletes. After that, we had the protest of the Northwestern football team and other institutions filing for pay for play. However, the NCAA didn't move till July. So that next month, there was various NIL state laws that went into effect. In February of 2022, the collectives begin to openly talk about visiting with recruits and letting them know what they can do for them to sign at that particular school in regards to how much money they will receive with the NIL deal. So in March of 2022, this is right before signing day, a five-star recruit in the class of 2023 signs an NIL deal worth as much as $8 million. Moving forward to next month, Miami guard Isaiah Wong's agent publicly announced Wong will transfer unless his NIL compensation increases. So now you see these players taking on the schools, just like coaches would say. So a player is going to come to the school and say, well, I scored X amount of points. We finished this number 1 or 2 in the conference tournament. We made it to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament off my play. I need my NIL endorsement increased. I'm going to find another school. So this NIL is also empower the players, just like the coaches, who many think the coaches are greedy, but they're just basically trying to get what they're worth for the amount of time that they're coaching. So again, the players are using this to better enhance themselves as well. So now moving forward to May, we have college sports leaders who just met in Phoenix and are announcing the impending crackdown of these booster-related NIL payments. Now, I mentioned a few moments earlier how players are either transferring to other Power 5 schools or BCS schools in regards to NIL deals. Now, there's also a different group that's transferring to from BCS schools to historically black colleges and universities that operate on the FCS. Now, Coach Deion Sanders, who's at Jackson State, has some thoughts on his NIL deals, and I just want to show you this last video before we get to our closing.
For his staff. But here's Deion Sanders, I think right out in his backyard, discussing about a minute or so the NIL.
NCAA, you got a little problem. Let me explain. See, with the NILs, which really ain't NIL because ain't no name, image, and likeness, it's just pay-per-view right now. That's what they doing to the big boys. Little boys, we can't compete with that. But anyway, you got a problem. See, when you start paying athletes like they're professionals, you get athletes acting like they're professionals. And you don't have staffs large enough and equipped enough to handle a young man with money. Let me go deeper. Handle a young man that's making more money than some of the coaches on staff. You got a real problem. So I suggest to you to allow college teams to hire more qualified men, that could handle these young men that's getting this money.
All right.
I mean, he's not wrong, but, I mean, you're also talking about right now there's, 10 or 15 guys that are going to do that. Assistant coaches at the big boys. But is he talking about at his level? To hire that because he also said they can't compete with the big boys.
There aren't many NIL deals, and Craig has mentioned this. We see whatever Jordan Addison's going to get, or what Quinn Ewers got, or the kid from Tennessee, or whatever. But the percentages of getting NIL money that's really big money is very small. We're focused on those because they're star players. The NFL has almost not everybody, but pretty much everybody on the roster is making more money than perhaps other than the coordinators and the head coach.
Well, and even then, the head coach still has a guy. Look, Tom Brady makes more than Todd Bowles does. So there's still that, but it's a different point. Tom Brady's 45 years old. He's a different point in his life. What Deion is, the point I do agree with.
Josh Allen's making more than Bills coach.
Yeah. The point I do agree with, though, is that you're talking about an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid who might be making more than a coach. And that's going to be hard for those coaches to handle those particular guys. But he's not wrong. I just think that the problem is not that big yet. But it's just something that they need to get out in front of. And they're talking about having no limits on coaching staffs. So that will probably change here shortly as well.
Yeah, I mean, I like when Deion reflects or discusses his opinions on topics like this, and I think it's good to have a black head coach who's coming from his perspective as well. And what I mean by that is that you hear a lot of times, and I know it's social media mostly, but you don't want to play the players, or it's somehow some personal vendetta, or it's old rich white men just want to be stingy with me. You know what I'm saying? And so it's good to have somebody that has been a player, has been a coach, has been a pro, he's been everything. He's been a high school coach, he's been a camp director. I mean, Deion's seen every aspect
from his own personal experience to all of the young men and women that he's been around at this point. So I think being at a lower level, and he's bound to have all those caps taken off because he's going to be at Florida State or wherever big brand he lands here in the next couple of years. I think we all expect that to happen, but I do think he's got more of an open and clear view of kind of both sides of the fence than most people do. And so, and I think, and being a black man as well, I think that does play into that as well, because a lot of the people that we're talking about are young black men. And there are definitely, I'm sure, some people out there who have a problem with that specifically. Now, thankfully, they're the minority, but he's got every base covered, basically, is what I'm saying. So he's got as knowledgeable of an opinion on this as anybody could possibly have, in my mind. And so I'm glad to hear him, with that experience, to be able to reflect from his point of view on what he thinks or sees as maybe some of these problems. And, I think it's pretty unanimous now across the board that every coach is like, yeah, we know it's part of the deal, but here's the tweaks that we would like. And he's suggesting a tweak here. Others have suggested other tweaks. And the whole time that we've been talking about NIL, it's not about anti-NIL. It's about just tweaks. And so everybody's in search of them. He's got a suggestion. Now, obviously, is that a little bit of a selfish suggestion? Yes, of course. He's got to look out for himself. But as we were talking about with our guest earlier, it's also, self-interest is what everybody's involved in. So I don't know what the exact rules are for coaching staff sizes as far as Jackson State goes. I don't know if it's any different than it may be other places or other levels, but I don't, if you can swing it, if you can afford it, he did put a lot of emphasis on the word qualified. He's not asking to just bring in street agents and have them around the players. He's asking for qualified coaches, and I think that expands the coaching trees, it expands the opportunities, and it probably would, if you get the right qualified people with the right backgrounds, help these young men navigate some of the issues that they're going to be facing that we throw out there as what we think could be potential problems, and what we have no idea because we don't have the experience or we're not in that foxhole with them, what the other issues are that come with NIL. Because I guarantee, I'm sure that as soon as a guy pops a big NIL deal, just like when a guy blows up as a musician or as an actor or whatever, especially young, what happens? All of a sudden, that third uncle that you'd seen at 2 family reunions comes calling, and people want their hands out, and that's a story that can go.
Now, the gentleman in that video brought up 2 different things. First, there's a small segment that doesn't want the majority of these African-American athletes to be paid. They think they're getting enough just with their tuition. And then secondly, as Coach Prime said, getting more qualified coaches to handle these young men who often don't look like the head coach that's coaching them. Having millionaires on college campuses and dorms can cause a lot of problems in regards to 18 and 19-year-olds with that much money. Most people remember stories when they went to college about different keg parties and things in their dorm rooms. So what do you think these kids are going to do if you're a millionaire? Like, it's nothing to spend $50,000 on a Saturday. So like Coach Sanders said, it could be a lot of negative effects that will lead these gentlemen not to get signed on a collegiate level based off their behavior and immaturity once receiving these NIL deals. So in closing, as Coach Sanders said, how can the smaller or HBCUs compete with the big boys? Just like economics and politics, it's about, supporting your own demographic groups. So these African-American media moguls, Byron Allen, Oprah, Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL stars, well, if they started collectives like the BCS schools are doing with their alumni and said, we're going to pay, we want this certain school to be on top, so we're going to pool our money to get a collective for these schools. So what if 3 players did a collective at one school, 3 did at another school, and all the Division I HBCUs had a collective? Then how would they compete on this level? Remember, to grow, you must look inside and help and support your own, so it can be considered on par with the masses of other cultures. Thank you for tuning in this week's episode of Sports 101. Please make sure you get social with Sports 101 and the litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by, again, following SportsZone Chicago on social media. You can follow SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZone CHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, we need everyone to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Sports 101. You can find me next week at our normally scheduled time, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much, and I'm gone.